Welcome to Tech This Way.
Hey, Malek.
Hi, how are you?
Pretty good. Hey, thanks a lot for making the time, man.
No problem. Happy to.
Yeah. So you're down in Singapore.
Yeah. So I've been living here I've been commuting to KL for 12 years. But I left in my first time I departed Singapore was because of the Asian financial crisis. Yeah, I was hugely in debt. I had to earn hard currency. Ringgit at the time was going all over the shop. Right? I had to earn hard currency, so I came to Singapore to pay back my loans.
Okay.
That's part of the story.
We can get into that soon.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So it's a pleasure to have you on the program.
No worries. Happy to.
So basically, I talk to guys like you and try to find out about your exciting entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah.
And we can go back as far as you comfortably want to go back to. From your lawyer days, if you like, even. And the transition to giving up your consulting job and then setting up some classified stuff. That's so really interesting.
Yeah. It's been a journey lah. It's quite an interesting one.
Can I ask where you're from originally?
I'm from KL.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just a completely city boy. I was just remember that I could hear the Quran reading from the National Stadium in those days. During football matches, I lived by the National Stadium.
Yeah. Okay, so you're either VI, St. John's, MBS. St. John's.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
I was MBS, just across the road.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I have a couple of friends there.
Okay.
Great.
So
I think I left when I was 11 years old. I went to Singapore already. I went to a boarding school here. So yeah, I guess just kind of lost touch with all the St. John boys.
Oh, you pretty much grew up in Singapore?
Not really, just in my boarding school. So a lot of holidays were in KL. Still very much. If you say whether KL or Singapore, so home is where the family is. So it's Singapore, right? So, but when it comes to friends and networks, it's definitely KL.
Right.
Yeah.
So then coming back from Singapore, you were in Bristol.
Yeah, Bristol, and then I did my 2 years in the US to do the MBA, and then came back. Yeah.
And then it was a standard career after that, as a lawyer.
Yeah. Well, as a standard career stopped in 1999, I think 1997. So and then it took off a non-standard career.
So what happened there? That's
no, I just started my own business, right? KL Classifieds. I started that.
Well, why did you do that? You're fairly new in the career.
Yeah, I mean, it's I don't know. It was just why do people start businesses, right? Because they think they can they can create something of value out of it. They can create something valuable. I was hugely excited about the information space, right? So the information basically at the time, all information was becoming digitized, and this was 1997, 1998, right?
Okay.
And
it's fairly new. Even email was becoming new then.
Yeah, I mean, but I had a little bit of a head start coming from the US. A little bit of a head start because I remember the professor coming in and bringing in this huge box computer, and this is 1993, 1994, right? Just plunked. Netscape was just about to be listed then. He plunked this computer on this, in the center of the classroom, and just says, "Look, we can hear sounds through the internet," right? Basically, he was playing, trying to play a music thing through the internet, basically a stream, right?
Right.
And it didn't work, so we just waited around and things like that. But the potential was there, and a lot of my classmates actually were the Web 1.0 guys. So the guy who wrote the business plan for Yahoo, became he's one of the Yahoo key personnel. Another person, some of them became sort of the adults in the room. I mean, a person from my class is Sheryl Sandberg. I don't know her personally, class of 900 people, but she's one of, so a lot of internet pioneers were from that 3 or 4 years during that time, the Internet 1.0, right?
And you were there at, was it Harvard or Stanford?
Harvard, yeah,
Harvard,
93 to 95, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. So that was thing, and yeah, and I got taken up by it as well. So yeah,
Hmm.
so, yeah.
So I
We're
guess
not
when
on yet, right? Formally, we're just chatting, right?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of started.
Okay. Kind of started. All right.
Yeah, it started
Chop
already.
What about yourself, Amra?
Mine was fairly boring. So I was at KL Boy, MBS.
Mm.
And then I did my uni in London at Imperial.
Okay.
I realized sorry?
What year was that in Imperial?
Graduated 95.
Okay.
Yeah. Then I realized I'm not cut out to be an engineer. I did
Okay.
chemical.
Okay.
And Anderson Consulting did one of their milk rounds, right? So they were talking about the company, and I said, "Oh, this computer stuff and projects." Being a consultant, it sounds cool. And that's where I was for say 15 years, 16 years.
Okay. Okay. Who was that with?
Anderson Consulting.
Of course.
Then Accenture. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, back to you. Okay, so you came back, became a lawyer, and then why the jump to media? I mean, on the classifieds, of all things.
So it started like this. My first love was actually radio. This was I did my MBA. So set back the scene, right? This was I did my first degree law, and then I continued, being a sort of graduated to become a lawyer. Realized that I was completely useless at it. I'm not a corporate lawyer. I'm a wordsmither. I'm not a wordsmither, I mean. And I remember struggling. I remember giving this partner my work, and the look on his face just told me everything, right? It says, basically, how can you come up with such crap? How do we even employ you, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't say it, was very kind.
Yeah.
But I could see it in his face. He was just shocked at the level of my wordsmithing. So I knew. So I knew that wasn't my calling. It was just something that I guess I did vicariously because of my father. My father really wanted to become a judge, so I was kind of like press gang into doing this, or guilt tripped into doing law for his sake, right? So I'm like, okay, Dad.
So what those were our times, right?
Yeah,
you did what your dad told you.
Yeah. Actually, he only got the idea from my teacher, right? One of my teachers, who was a Ghanaian guy from Ghana, he was my football coach as well, happened to see my father and say, "Hey, your son, this is on the basis of one classroom situation. I was part of he put me as part of the debate, and I happened to debate apparently quite well. So he sort of incepted this idea that I could be a good lawyer to my father." And since my father wanted to be a judge anyway, unfulfilled, unrequited love for the law, habis lah.
That's it.
I couldn't get out of it, right? So either that, or I knew medicine wasn't my thing. So okay lah, law, and it proved useful. I mean, even now, I mean, literally, I never regretted doing it, but it wasn't my first love, right?
Yeah.
My first love was actually economics and how things work. How the financial world works. Not so much financial, how the real world, how the economy works. How do businesses work? Right? I remembered, I enjoyed business, and one of the areas that I found great opportunity in, I thought was, when I went to England for the first time, was radio, and my first love was radio. I said, I'm going to start a business in radio, because in Malaysia, it was just all, it was all boring and everything. And in the UK at the time, it was fantastic. It was really exciting. It was funny. It was emotional. You had Chris Tarrant on the, you were an Imperial. So you know about Chris Tarrant. You know about the radio, right? It's something that you kind of like, wow. And then that's where we pick up the humor. We pick up the sarcasm and all that kind of thing. So radio was the first love. So never mind. I said, never mind, we can wait for this. Then I went off to do my MBA. And then, maybe I wanted to try to get to Silicon Valley at the time, Web 1.0, but I couldn't. My visa didn't allow me to work in the US, so I said, okay, never mind. I'll come back to KL. But along the way, when I remember during my summer internship, I heard that that Time Highway Radio was was launched, and Time Highway Radio was a hit, right? The Fly Guy, etc. Right, was a real hit.
Kev and Fly Guy, yeah.
Yeah, and I say, wow, they're really liberalizing. So maybe I can come in and maybe somehow, come back, work for consulting firm for a while, and find, and maybe get my hands on a, or propose a radio station that we can do. After all, there were all the channels were empty, right, except for RTM channels.
Actually, yeah, you're
And
right.
then,
Before THR, it was
yeah,
all piped programs from the US, right? The top 40 or something on the weekends, or
yeah,
so quite limiting, lah. And then suddenly,
yeah,
Lil Kevin, THR came out. I was like, wow,
yeah,
you're right. Like suddenly
yeah,
that became the station, right? The cool hip
yeah.
station.
But I'm sure it wasn't a surprise to you and me because we've studied in the UK before, so you know where that is coming from. But they just happened to do it first, right?
Yeah.
Which is great. So I said, right, I want to get into this, and then suddenly, but unfortunately, a fellow alumni, about 30 years my senior, maybe 25, I don't know, launched 6 radio stations at once. His name is Ananda Krishnan.
Oh, did he?
Something called
Oh,
Networks. Yeah. Now Astro, right? So
Yeah.
so somehow he managed to wrangle. He has a satellite deal, but he also managed to get some terrestrial radio licenses as well, right? Sapu first,
Yeah.
Sapu and ask questions later. And I'm told later that he wasn't supposed to have that, but never mind. So I said, wow, here's a billionaire already got 6 radio station licenses. I better stick to consulting for a while until I find something other business opportunity. I'm not going to compete with a billionaire here.
Yeah.
So so left that for a while. So I said, okay, what else is there to do? I was consulting at this time, and okay, consulting is fun. It's interesting. It's intellectually challenging. You've been there before. A lot of clients, but that sort of entrepreneurial calling is always bugging me. So you already had one. Radio cannot do already. What else can I do? What else can I do? Right? And I thought, well, there's this other thing, and I usually pick up a few ideas along the way. I still pick up ideas until today. It's like, what are the interesting things that are happening around the world that can be applied to Malaysia? And I'm sure when you went to Imperial as well, you came across this magazine called Loot.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Loot.
Students'
right?
favorite.
Students' favorite thing. You buy it's a classifieds paper, and it's a brilliant business model. Why? You don't have to expense it. People buy it just for the ads, right? The classifieds.
Yeah.
So it's a brilliant model because you don't need editorial team, which is expensive. Usually newspapers have this problem, right? They have an editorial team and then they have advertising to subsidize. Whereas this one, you just buy it for the advertising, so you don't have an editorial team. It's a beautiful business model, right?
Yeah.
Hey, this is really interesting. I should do this. I should try this, right? So I did, and literally, it was just, it was that. And I thought that with this, start off with, at the time, this was 1996, 1997. I thought, hey, Malaysia is still print oriented. Let's do print first, but make sure that you have a pathway to digitizing all this, because that's going to be classifieds online is going to be fantastic, right? Because it just lends itself to it, right?
What was it at that point? Was it just, I don't know, adverts in the Star, New Straits Times? Was it with the classified?
So at the time, it was something I think you forgot, because it's the Malay Mail. Malay Mail had the best classifieds.
Okay.
That paper came in the afternoon.
Right.
Not in the morning, it came in the afternoon. I remember all the office workers were all looking at Malay Mail. After your page 3 pin-up, whatever, at the time.
The Malaysian version.
Malaysian version, that's right. Not the Sun version.
Yeah.
After your page 3, then you flick. Basically, it's 120 pages of classifieds, right? Property car the whole shebang.
Yes.
I looked at that. I thought, wow, 120 pages. You multiply each 4 lines is worth about, I think at the time, about 30-40 ringgit, right? Basically, even in those days, 30-40 ringgit for 4 lines. Like, you count it out, like one page is about, wow, this is about 20,000 ringgit per page, right? And so, okay, let's compete with this. Let's bring this model to KL, at least. I call it KL Classifieds, and I left consulting to do this, right? So just big one problem, and the problem was 6 months later, or rather, as I was in the process of about to launch, we had something called the Asian financial crisis. And even for the Malay Mail, 120 pages, quite thick, became 18 pages. Right? So it was like an 85% contraction. And then I am a new kid on the block trying to get this going.
Where did you get your funding from at that point?
So I got my funding from a guy called you should know the guy, Tong Kui Ong.
Heard the name. He doesn't know me.
He doesn't know you. Tong Kui Ong, who was the owner of the Edge at the time. And he started Edge. I thought, oh, great, this is a banker going to media, and maybe I can excite him. So I presented a proposal to him. It was a half an hour presentation. I got $1 million, right? So I got money. And I'm like, wow, is it, but yeah, he had faith in it. And I put some of my own money. We raised about, so my own money was about 300,000, which I borrowed, and another co-founder who put in another, another 100-something thousand ringgit, something like that. But so between the three of us is about 1.5 million ringgit, and this is 300,000 ringgit of ringgit that I didn't have. This is 300,000 ringgit I just borrowed.
That's a lot back then.
Yeah, it's huge, and maybe we might have, I borrowed from Tong's bank, uncollateralized. So
based on trust.
So that happened, and launched it. Tried it for a year. I remember, the bar was going down. I remember asking Tong, hey, shall we still go ahead? I mean, I've spent $200,000, right? I spent $200,000 on paper, equipment, and we got some lease obligations and all that. But we can't come out of this just by, let's maybe, let's think, let's decide whether to go or launch or not. And then he said, no, this one, even for him, it was like, no, this one will be temporary. This Asian financial crisis is just a temporary thing. So I'm like, you know what? Okay lah, let's go for it, right? Unfortunately, it was the wrong call. No one's to blame. No one could predict that. Like no one can predict now. Wrong call, and basically I was on the hook for 300,000 bucks. My co-founder lost his 170,000 ringgit, whatever. And Tong lost 1 million. But the tidying up was so hard, and after that I was scrambling. I owed the bank. The bank was calling. The suppliers were calling. Why, I have this, they have this huge roll of paper that they can't resell on in the warehouse. When am I going to pay for it? Can I, and so on. So I had to deal with debt collectors with knuckle dusters on your hands. Just.
And you were fairly young then too, right? So not even 30.
Well, 31, 32. So not a pleasant experience. Not a pleasant experience. And interestingly, it was it allows me to, in a way, So I've seen people like that. I mean, I've seen people in desperate circumstances, as I was in those days, and I try not to, put too much pressure, right? In fact, there was exactly the same guy, exactly the same sort of person, same sort of situation, that owed BFM money like that, right? He bought some advertising and stuff like that. So I know how he felt, but then I guess I can become a counselor in a way to say, like, look, at the end of the day, what you can, usual things are don't run away, face the thing, just keep the communication lines open, etc. But we're digressing. So at the time, it was difficult. But there was unusual. I mean, maybe it's fortuitous. It's providence, act of God. But there's a guy called Mark Chang, who I was like, he was doing something called Job Street, which was putting jobs online, right? And there was some synergy with me when I was doing the paper. I put his jobs and put it on paper, so that gives him some coverage and vice versa. And he said to me, he found out about my my venture collapsing, so he said, why don't you join me and Job Street? I said, sure. And then he told me the salary. I said, cannot, because I have to pay back this 300,000. And I can't do it on a 4,000, 5,000 ringgit salary, right? And then he said, okay. But then I got a call from him a week later, and he said, look, some of my co-founders want to see you. I said, why? Because I said, I can't. I told you already, I can't do this. He said, no, never mind. Just come over anyway and talk. And so I talked, and inside the room were a guy called Ng, another guy called Charles, and they were the co-founders of Job Street. And I remember being in the meeting, being a bit like, wow, this meeting is very weird. They're asking me about philosophy, my values, the questions were all over the shop, right? And it wasn't really about sort of KL Classifieds or Job Street, whatever. And then after the meeting, I was asked to step out, so I stepped out, and then they had a small discussion. I came back to the room again. And why I say it was fortuitous is because Kate came up to me and said, Malik, I'm going to give you how much do you owe? How much do you owe the bank? Yeah? Malu lah. I said 200,000 instead of 300,000. I should have said 300,000. Honesty is always the best policy. But he said, okay, I'm going to give you a check for 200,000 ringgit. Right? You join JobStreet. If we fire you, we don't find you not suitable. When we fire you, you don't have to pay it back. But if you leave, you have to pay it back. Right? And if you leave voluntarily, and join JobStreet, and these are, and we got a venture capital company calling on us to expand JobStreet. We want you to work on that. So my gosh, that's a person that actually solved 2/3 of my problem, right? Which is great. It could have solved 100% of my problem if I had been honest.
So if you look back, what do you think did you do right for them to put such a deal?
I think it was just pure honesty, right? Except for that 200,000 part.
If you could say the important part, right? But anyway, yeah. So so you're just being frank and honest about your misadventure.
Being frank and honest about what I'm what went wrong, and how I'm gonna make it back up. At least personally, I wasn't thinking about them at the time. But yeah, I think I think for everyone concerned, it was a nice thing, right? They had a venture capital company already interested, and they needed someone to sort of just bring it over the line, because we had JobStreet had no business plan, you just had Mark, who was an engineer, right? And you're an engineer yourself, and he was like, okay, business plan, how? For me, it was like, business plan, okay, I can do, and this and that, and so on, right? And I laid out. So I joined them, and we got the funding, and then JobStreet started that phase of expansion in 1999. I remember the revenue at the time was only about 250,000 ringgit, right?
So that was from scratch, right?
That was not from scratch. It already had been in existence for about 2-3 years, 2 years or so. Mark started a website design company. At first, he started something called MOL.com, which had a few I think got sold to Vincent, etc. in a bit early on in the day. But basically, he started a few things. I mean, it's Web 1.0, right? You try everything, right? So you try doing, first thing you do, website design, because that's what everyone wanted, right? So Mark started website design, tried to make some money off a portal. He had a portal there, so he was following a bit of the Yahoo model at the time, right? Alta Vista, etc., search engine, all that kind of thing. And then that kind of didn't work out because we didn't have scale. And so now, and then suddenly he was designing a website for Dell, and Dell goes, hey, why don't you create a job site lah? We're trying to get engineers from the US, right? Like, okay, I'll do that now. I'll do job site. Oh, and Dell, what did you pay for it? I'll create a corporate website for you. No. Why don't you, smart for Dell Malaysia? No, you do yourself. You do your thing. I don't mind. It doesn't have to be exclusive. You can get engineers from all the other companies. So Mark started building it up, and then it became suddenly the portal itself wasn't a great business, but the jobs was a great business, right? The jobs classifieds. So I had 1 year's experience in doing physical classifieds, but had a lot of kind of like thinking and in a way a path for internet classifieds. So in a way it's a marriage that was opportune for everyone at the time. So I did that for 4 years, and it was great. But I think towards my fourth year, and the JobStreet was expanding. We came through some difficult times. 2000 crisis, the dot-com crisis.
The dot-com bust,
dot-com bust. But we still were okay. But I think generally the VCs, wanted us to, or rather the director that the VCs planted to advise us was a real old school guy, and to him it was like, what, you guys need to cut down your cost, and I was a casualty, meaning that they basically like, okay, one of your co-founders, even they call me co-founder, Malek is he's earning this. I think you need to get him back to Malaysia, earning back a Malaysian salary. He's in Singapore trying to build your business there, but there's no business to be built in Singapore yet. You can bring him back. And it didn't suit my personal circumstances at the time. So we had a parting of ways. But I still had some shares. And that worked out quite okay. So
they did quite well.
it worked out quite okay. It helped me put the first down payment on my first house, right? So
Nice.
so that was great.
Nice.
Yeah. So not to retire on, but it could have been retired on, but I helped my shares all the way. But but I didn't. So there we are. There were some pressing needs like a house and family in between.
Other parts. Yeah. So then what happened after JobStreet?
So I had a stint as on the corporate side. I went to Maxis for a while. Again on the mobile internet side.
Okay.
And that was
well in the way of technology, like right?
Yeah. Sort of this was pre-iPhone days. And then I worked for Yahoo after that. And then after Yahoo, I decided to go, you know what, this is a game for the big boys. If I wanted to become in this, or if I wanted to be in this space at the time, I thought, I had to join, it's either, I had to join the Google mobile team, which at the time they didn't have a name for Android yet, right? I have to be an employee, or I could go back on this entrepreneurial path, right? So I think let's see how the dice rolls. So at the time I came back to radio again because I was hearing a lot of complaints from people saying that radio has now become cookie cutter, right? It's like Fly Guy and Little Kev have gone on, and everyone else trying to copy Fly Guy and Little Kev and not quite succeeding. And everyone's about every discussion, everything has to be a joke all the time. So and
the crank calls and things,
crank calls getting repetitive and so on, right? So okay. So I said, all right, maybe people do need now they have 2 hours on the road every day. Maybe they do need something else, something more substantive. And I was older by this time. I was in my late 30s, coming up to my 40s. I said, well, my interests have changed from sort of hit music and that, what else would people want? So I think maybe it's about a very substantive station. But why not a business station, right? We can't. It's a talk station, but focus on business. Because The Edge did it in the newspaper space, and you can develop quite niche. I've heard of BFM in France, which is a business station in France. I've heard of a Russian station, etc., in business, and all the business stations seems to hold their own. And I thought, why not do this? It's your interest anyway. You have an MBA, you have, and I also have, and part of my sort of makeup is actually, I really do want to see Malaysian. One thing I realized when I came back from the US is how we think from how US companies and US managers think about business is very, very different from the public companies of Malaysia at the time. Right?
What do you mean?
US companies were very US companies, if you ask to do them something, they'll do one thing, but they'll do it really, really well, right? Google, search, right? Yeah. And then they start doing other things, but my gosh, and then what happens is, okay, okay, we're going to split it, we have a search business, the others we hive off, right? So they're very, they can focus on one thing and make that one thing really, really work. If you look at, whether it's precision parts or even, so they have this very focused mentality. Whereas in Malaysia at the time, and still to a certain extent, we're a very conglomerate type thing. Oh, you do this, we do 6 different things. We have 6 core businesses, right? Which is an oxymoron. You don't have 6 core businesses. You either have 1 core business, right? Or you have 6 businesses, right? Yeah. You don't have 6 core businesses. So, and I find that sometimes, and you look at the successful Malaysian companies today, what are the companies that what are global world beaters out there? Gloves, condoms, right? We have 2 world beaters, 2 world number ones, because they focus on one thing. Gloves, condoms. Yeah. That's slightly inaccurate. The condom guys were going to rubber gloves, and the rubber gloves guys are going to condoms, but generally speaking, and you have the regional guys like Air Asia, focus on airlines, and when they haven't focused, like football and car racing, motorsports, then everything just fell apart. But generally, the airlines was good until we had COVID. Now, of course, that one you can't blame them for that, right? But they had focus. So I think this sort of things, and I realized that I wanted to do this. So there were some things, maybe there's something, I wanted to see Malaysian companies compete hold their own internationally. So I thought, right, doing a business radio station might be a way to at least at least move the narrative towards, from sort of just domestic type things to, how do you compete internationally? How do you be successful internationally? And that's still the mission today.
So it wasn't so much from obviously the business had to stand by itself, right? As a station, but what I'm hearing is more about what you can do with the station as opposed to the station as a business.
Yeah, that's right. So I it's always been my case that it's to a certain extent, yes, I'm very I want to make sure that any business can pay for itself, right? But if it's doing good, I'm okay with just paying for the business paying for itself. Much to my shareholders, some of my shareholders are upset when they hear that, right? But hey, how come we're supposed to make money? I'm like, yeah, but okay lah. But you don't have to, make. You must have a thing. I remember my boss, who's now it's kind of like he founded Navis Capital, the guy called Nick Bloy. He looks at me and goes, Malek, you always involve yourself in businesses that are there's something social to them, right? And which makes it hard for me to invest. Right? He goes like, yeah, there is a social element, but so long as we, and BFM is not, and I must say BFM is not like, it's not just sustainable. It does churn out the profit, right? Maybe not recently, not with the COVID and stuff, but yeah, it's holding its own. It's still sustainable even during these difficult times. But yeah, we do generate profits out of that, which is great. I think that's, to me, the ideal scenario is when you are doing something which you have an agenda. I'll admit it. I have an agenda, which is to make Malaysian businesses and managers and more competitive. We have a vision for BFM. The other agenda is building first world Malaysians, and we have that agenda. And if the agenda allows us also to pay for ourselves and make a bid on the side, why not? Right? That's great. That's the most ideal scenario.
So if you were to go back to the start of BFM, how was that?
Yeah.
Okay, so you had to find a team. Obviously, you never ran owned a station before. How did that go?
I was naive, right? So first, I've always operated after going from JobStreet, Maxis, Yahoo, etc. You're generally dealing with a lot of coders, programmers, product managers, and so on. I've never had to deal with media people or creative people. I mean, they are a lot of people I work with are creative technologically, but they're not necessarily sort of things. So that created a huge culture shock for me, actually. And when I was recruiting people, I'm like, I've never got a resume where people said their color of their eyes are green with contact lenses. Like, huh? What kind of resume is this? But yeah, they are personalities, and and here I am having a very much a sort of a left brain type business environment, left brain content, business, finance, with an industry that is generally right brain, meaning very creative, that's right, and very kind of like very in a way creative people. I recognize it because there's an element of me that is very precious about their ideas, but very proprietary about the ideas. Very, sort of, if you reject their ideas, we get very upset.
It's personal.
It's personal, right? And ad agencies are like that, right? And so on, very, very personal. And so, so when I try to, kind of in a way impose here's a guy who has never done media before, never done radio before, trying to, only knows business, and trying to cajole his people in radio, with prior experience radio, this is the way we do it for business, and radio. I get flagged for that, right? So literally, I lost half my team in the first 18 months. Right? So recruit a whole bunch of people, lost half of them.
Especially when the content itself wasn't your typical radio station, right? This is not another musical entertainment stuff. This is kind of fairly serious content, right?
Yeah. So I think that there was, there was that thing about my own credibility, because I didn't come from media, but no one had the business credibility either, right? and we are not able to talk because they can't. I mean, when I speak to the early people I hired, they couldn't recognize my business credibility, and I couldn't recognize their media credibility. You know what I mean? Who are you again? They're like, who are you in business? We can't establish that, right? So at the end of the day, I guess I had to, with half the team that was left, to really sort of build out this business and media credibility together, right? And we started from the business side because without the business, without the content, without displaying that you know your stuff, you can't get credibility amongst your targeted listeners. And until today, we're not the best presenters in the world, right? We are not good at sort of the slick radio sounds and all that. BFM sounds a bit raw sometimes, right?
But they're still good.
Yeah, I get it, but I can say that, but but it's not like sometimes it's not polished. I can say sometimes we're a bit we try to. It's like diamond in the rough, lah. What we say, do we have to polish? Even until today, I cringe. I say, Chuang, why do you ask 2 questions at a time? Please, the guy is your interviewee is going. Hold on a second. Let me split your questions into 3 parts. When your guest is saying that something is wrong, let me split your questions that you asked me just now into 3 parts, right? Part 1, I think what you're asking is part 2, part 3. So our presentation is not the best, but with our content, our substance, we try to improve that, but our substance is second to none. So I think so that's how we built it. We built it on basically make sure that you know your stuff, and have the humility to know that the intelligence is out there, right? And our job as presenters and producers is to draw it out from the from the guests. Everyone has something to bring to the table, and if the bonus is if you can present this well, fantastic. The bonus is that you can really present this way in an engaging way. That's fantastic, and we have a couple of presenters that do that really, really well. I mean, I find, for example, this lady who interviewed Serena Shukri this morning, Wong Xiaoning. I enjoy her things. She is, her presentation skills are excellent, and her questions are so chili padi, but sit politely, but respectfully, but challenging. It's like everything all rolled into one. It's a one sugar coated padi, it's just like eating a chocolate with padi, with chili padi inside. So then when that happens, it's magical.
So when you started it out, sorry, go ahead.
No, so I said, to your first question. Sorry, when one loop, but to your first question, there was a clash of cultures, and in a way, we all had to figure out what was the culture that we wanted, and secondly, also, in a way, I had to really learn about the different how to reconcile the creative right brain culture with the analytical left brain culture.
Now, those were the challenges internally, right? What about the challenges to the market itself? Because obviously at that point, the only serious radio was your RTMs, right? And then there's the music. So here's a new concept, if you like, right? I mean, we all know I don't know, CNN, if you go to hotels and things. So how did you convince, from a business standpoint, that there is a market for this, and that people would pay the advertising to keep it going?
Yeah. So as always with these things, you try to persuade a few anchor tenants, right, to come on board with you, and that was my market advertiser strategy. Who can be these anchor tenants, anchor advertisers on BFM. And I was fortunate enough to be able to secure CIMB in the early days, to sponsor this show called The Breakfast Grill. Right?
Oh, okay. Or even way back then.
Way back then, the first sponsor of The Breakfast Grill. How do I get to CIMB? I was lucky enough to go to university with the CEO at the time. And I said, look, do you want to be an investor? First, my first approach to him was to be an investor in BFM. He says, no, I can be more of use to you as a customer rather than an investor, right? So then he says, okay, why don't you speak to my marketing team? So hashed it out. The marketing team were really hard on me, drive a good bargain, and that was it, right? So we managed to get on board. Once you get one on board, two on board, three on board, then then the rest are like, oh, you can point to references and so on, and then it became what it is, right? So that's how it started off. So financial services. Our first one was CIB.
Okay.
Then we built it from there. And then I know that sales is not my forte. I was very lucky to then be able to have access to people who have experience in media sales, and it was great. Once they came on board, and then they introduced me to other people on board, and one just retired recently. But we had a great. He built it from sort of media, from a sales perspective and all that. We started the engine started moving, which is great.
Are you surprised that at this point today there's actually no competition to BFM? It's still the only business channel, right?
So at first I was I was thinking about this. At first I was really expecting it, right? But it's amazing though. As I'm in the market more and more, it's because it's not easy to do. It's not. I tell you why. Right? Say you're Astro, and Astro did approach me. The guy, not in the current team, but previous team, George Chapman. I think one of the advisors approached me and said, "Hey, look, do you want to do this within Astro, right? And we do you want to do this? I mean, we can give you the thing." But I said, all right, editorial, who runs? Oh, we have the final call. Astro will have the final call. I said, okay. But that, he says, why? And I said, why do you have to have the final call? Why can't you just invest and let us be independent? He says, well, the problem is this: you say something wrong, and we lose. I'm not sure what's Astro's revenue right now. Let's say it's $5 billion. We lose 5 billion ringgit in revenue because of one station, because you're pushing the envelope. We can't afford to do that. We have a 5 billion business to take care of, right? So I'm like thinking, okay, that's really interesting, because then the big guys have a lot to, just for this one, one chiku, kind of like small business, you are sacrificing your whole $1 billion empire. So those big guys won't come in, because what we say and what we think, for me, is easier. At the end of the day, I talk to my shareholders, which there's about 6 of us, and we go, okay, I'm going to push this. Your money is at risk, and things like that. But at the end of the day, for all of us, we all buy into the agenda, and it's our money at risk. We can make the call because it's our money. In Astro, they cannot make the call because it's not their money. Right? It's shareholders, it's other shareholders' money, it's your public shareholders' money, it's another Christian's money. Right? So so that's a tough thing. So I think that's why I think about this, and I think the only people that can do this are people who are also independently minded and independent, etc. So I think the Edge can do this, for example. But
sure.
But at the end of the day, they invested in us for a while, and then now they left. But why, right? I mean, why compete? Because they have their newspaper, we have our radio, we work well together, we know each other, and things like that. So yeah. So in that sense, to your question about competition, that is the big companies find it hard to do, because it's hard for your salary earning manager to make the tough calls, which might affect your existence.
So it's not so much, I was thinking perhaps it's a question of the maturity of the audience itself, that there wasn't a wide enough market of listeners.
To a certain extent, it is you are talking about more, it's not your mass market, right? People like I don't know, Era and all that can deliver 3-4 million listeners, right? Ours is like 1/10 of that, right? So so and if you're used to selling by numbers, right? This is crazy. I'm selling 10%. I can't even open my mouth to advertisers, right? But for us, we have a different way of selling, right? We say, look, we don't sell by numbers, we sell by quality. that many 100,000 listeners are all we can show you they are responsible for corporate purchases of R1 million, kind of thing, right?
It's almost a one-to-one overlap with the edge, right?
Yeah, it is. Actually, ours is wider because it's more accessible. Edge, it is a bit more. You have to be really a market participant, really,
That's true.
to get involved with the edge, to really get into it, right? Whereas for us, you don't have to be a market participant. You can be an entrepreneur, like listening and just kind of like getting feedback. And we've had kids, university students, professors use us as case, listen to professors tell at universities, listen to BFM for this. I've had parents coming to me and saying, hey, my kids are really going to me and asking, hey, they listen to Breakfast Grill. The father loves a Breakfast Grill. He says, the kids go to him and say, hey, can we ask questions like this from our teachers, Breakfast Grill style. So that's nice. I think, so we have a wider footprint, more accessible, and then they'll graduate into the edge, for example.
Yeah, and I guess the listeners, is it pretty much Klang Valley and the big cities in Malaysia?
We have no choice. Sadly, we've not been. We've applied so many times, but we haven't been able to get secure frequencies outside of Klang Valley.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're just a Klang Valley station, meaning KL and Selangor. We beam out from somewhere called Ulu Kali, which is near Genting Highlands. But we haven't been able to secure any frequencies. I remember, and it's, I remember we almost got Penang, and then I don't know, for some reason the MCMC person at the time just I don't know, just savaged us for saying one thing wrong. And then the whole thing didn't go through, right? So I'm like, wow, this is really interesting. And it's to me, this is where I'm like thinking sometimes, you have all these RTM stations, you have all this thing, and this is a great value. This is, you get education in business and, for free, meaning from a private radio station that's sustainable. Your investment is only to give them the frequency, and then you can educate the country. But I don't know who to say this to. I've said it to so many folks. Everyone's like, "Oh, don't have frequency." It's like
it's probably the same story as the S02E07, right? Oh, you don't want you be saying the wrong things about links, to
exactly. So, but I think you want to educate the population or not, right? So,
right.
Yeah. So do you want I mean, yeah. So and we can do this, and it's got, but okay, now it's digital, but did say yes, you have the app and everything, but really it's nice to have that layer of airwaves, right? So you can because they need to be introduced. They need to be introduced to the media first. They need to be introduced to the content first before they get excited about downloading the app. Right? And that's what we're not in KL. We are. So when people go off to Australia, people say to me, right, oh, Malek, after I came to KL, was working, I'm based in Penang, now I download the app and all that. That's fine. So basically, you've converted them, but converting people by asking to download the app right off the bat, really hard, right? Really, really hard. Yeah, I think the only person that I think of my hat to, and even then, it's not. I think it's Clubhouse. I think they managed to do it for people to download the app. Even before sort of anything substantive happens, and then now look at it, it's 10%. It's 10% of its audience.
So would you do something like that? I guess obviously you can stream some of your podcasts and your radio station online, even, right?
So we did all that since day one.
Right. So that's already there.
Yeah. So it's just the act of sort of. But as I said, the only people who do that right now are those who are already acquainted with us.
Yeah.
Those who are fresh, they're like, hey, I can listen to the, if I'm hard up for things, I'll listen to something out of US, NPR, this and that. What's BFM?
Actually, so coming back to my competition question, right? Because in Malaysia, I guess the competition is not just in Malaysia now, right? Because we have access to media from everywhere, pretty much.
Yeah, exactly. The only thing where there is an element, right? So for example, today, you're not gonna have a discussion about, is Surina Shukri, is she on the way out or not, right? At MDEC. You're not gonna hear that conversation.
That's right. It's quite local,
Yeah, it's quite local. So basically, so we had that question of Surina Shukri this morning. Questions about so it's localization. It's your local news, right? So and as your local news, not only that, it's also your local analysis.
Yeah.
And I think the analysis part is important, because news is, everyone can come up with news. You have, you have Malaysia Kini, you have this, everyone, but can you analyze it quickly? I think that's the trick.
So how many years has it been now, BFM? Just
21 started 2008, so yeah, 13 years, coming up to our 13th year.
Wow.
Or September.
So as we come to the top of the hour,
Yeah,
so the question then is, where to next? Like 13 years is a long time.
Yeah. So I've moved on already, right? So I'm no longer managing BFM. I've actively, at the 10th year mark, I've actually sort of handed my reins over to a.
So then is that FiLife at the back there on your background?
Exactly. So I've moved on to I guess financial wellness is the overall heading, and I like to get there. But I guess my way in is through InsurTech, right? And
so why that jump?
Simply because I think so this the jump is this. I'll be honest with you, right? The Malaysians are I can be very forceful, but we're not getting a good deal as consumers from financial products. We're really not. The fact that you have 2/3 of our policies, we sell investment-linked plans, right? Which everyone knows, right? And everyone does it. Etika does it. The whole insurance industry does it. It's a lousy product for consumers. You pay so much fees, distribution fees for that product. You pay maximum. You may pay now 1%, 2% for someone to sell you a unit trust, right? But how many percent do you pay to buy investment-linked product? That money goes into your funds when you're allocating. So what I'm trying to say is that there is something wrong, and everyone seems to be in this sort of like, it's hard to change because this is where we make our profits, and no one's going to go to their board and say, look, we're going to sacrifice our most profitable product because it's just not right. No one's going to do that. So you need again this independent, kind of like folk, sort of socially going, saying, hey, there's lots of costs around that consumers didn't pay for. Let's disrupt this. Let's change this, and let's do something which is morally right, and not sell this terrible products to consumers. 67%, right? Just because someone says, oh, we have the insurance industry has created this logic of like, you get the best of both worlds when you buy investment-linked product, right? And we know that that's not true. You get the worst of both worlds. Right?
So I guess your own experience in insurance is pretty much as a customer yourself.
Yeah, completely. Any business I do is from the perspective of customer. I've never seen it. I've never done any business from a perspective of, okay, maybe a B2B, fine, whatever. But I've never seen it as a thing. So yeah, and also, but the insurance is just one. There's other elements. Right? So the epiphany came when my usual habit at BFM is to have coffee after the breakfast grill. Whoever our guests are, have coffee with them because they're usually quite traumatized. They need a decompression. Right? Yeah. So I'll make them some coffee personally. Some coffee, sit down, just like kind of like, okay, calm down, it's all right. You did well. Yeah.
Boost the morale a bit. Yeah.
Boost the morale a bit. And then we'll talk, right? And then it's interesting. From those talks, I realized that a lot of them might be great managers of their companies and businesses, right? Or a professional manager. But unless you're from the financial services industry, right? We're talking about non-financial services industry. A lot of them are a little bit like a bit sort of like they are also hungry for they also need something about their knowledge of personal finance. It's not as high as we would think it is, right? So I had one CEO asking me, Malik, how do I? And this is like we're talking about 2016, 2017. Asking me, hey, Malik, how do you invest in US stocks? Yeah, these guys don't know. They're so busy, right? They're like, and the people that they do meet, so they have their requisite insurance plans, etc. But but they don't, the act of investing is still a thing. So I'm like, wow, if the CEO group or the C-suite group still can't get their hands around this, get their heads around this, something is wrong, right? So there is a gap in education, there's a gap in knowledge. So why not, sort of start making headway in that, right? Start changing that. And the opportunity came when I was like, and I was like, okay, how do I get into this area? How do I get into this space? I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not this. I'm not that. Then there's this company called U4Life that started advertising on BFM. They launched, selling direct, sort of direct insurance to the customer. Created a splash. They sold, for the first time, they sold kind of like term life, yearly renewable term insurance online, right? Completely. And they were advertisers. But I guess cost acquisition was really high for them. And after a while, I heard news that I remember thinking, wow, this is a great product. It's exactly the kind of like mantra that I like. Maybe, you basically say buy term and invest the rest, right? So breaking this sort of, at least this particular sector of industry, which is investment in plans, etc. But they ran into cost acquisition problems, right? Like very expensive. It's not easy to sell life insurance online. So the opportunity was there for me for they were put on sale. Right? So let's make a bid for it. Made a bid for it, won it, and rebranded it to FiLife. But to me, it's the first step. It was the first tangible step that I can get into this space, right? Ideally, it would have, there'll be a robo advisor, this, that, the other. But hey, this was the opportunity that came. And that landed on my desk. I said, let's buy it and then and build from it. And that's how it's all started. U4Life. So now we're in that space where we're selling insurance, life insurance online, and we're realistic about it, right? We're realistic, meaning that we know that this is really, really difficult. It's not easy. People are not making life decisions, just online like that. So it's something which has a bit more of a long gestation period. But we're willing. We're capitalized so that we can play the long game.
So the bet is still on not using agents?
Correct. Definitely. Not using agents. And because that sucks up 35%, 40% of the value of the thing. Basically, you're transferring value for someone to distribute a product to you. Right. And the consumers pay for it in the end. So that's the idea. So I think starting with that, and I guess, and it's becoming a very interesting space right now. So we made a bid for the insurtech space, and then there's now there's an investment space. You have the Stashaways of the world and the Whiteheads of the world coming in on that space. You have the digital banks coming on that on one side. So it's becoming a very you have the e-payment guys coming on the other, and it's still a bit of a kind of like okay, you don't know how it's all gonna pan out, right? But some I think there's a few. I think there's there's in the robo advisory space you can see some leading lights and e-payment as well, etc. Insurtech, not yet, right? So we're all competing in that space. So let's see what happens.
Yeah, I guess the digital banking licenses is going to pave the way first, and then the insurance licenses will follow pretty soon after that. I guess. It's pretty much again the banks and their branches and their legacy with the digital banks, insurance with their agents to the digital.
So and the idea is basically, and we've seen what's happened, right? Once, I think, again, there is a social agenda. What's the social agenda? The social agenda is that Malaysians should not have financial anxiety, as they are right now, as they are experiencing right now. We should not have that. And unfortunately, now it's become worse, right? People have ICNR, etc., have to take out money from their EPF accounts. They'll have financial anxiety, not just now, but they also have financial anxiety in 20 years' time, right? So we have to kind of like, first, private sector, we should do as much as we can for the private sector folks, those who can afford to save, those who we can afford to counsel, etc., right? Those who are working and all that. But I think the bigger social agenda also, and I think this is where I think I don't think private sector can do this, and where you have to figure out for those people in the informal economy or in the low wage economy, how do we cater for their financial wellness in their old age? etc. How do we fulfill their aspirations, right? And this one is there are solutions out there. I can think of some already. It's just this question is whether people can, whether there's enough will to do that. I'll give you an example, right? Today, PNB, right, manages our sort of our sort of saving investment account.
Yes.
Amanah Saham, etc. It is not very difficult for someone like PNB, right, to say, you know what, we're going to set up protection for 100,000 ringgit for every single account holder, and we're going to deduct a certain amount from their account every year to pay for this 100,000 ringgit. 100,000 ringgit, if something happens to you, critical illness, you can something happens to you, your family has something, right? You can a TPD, etc. You have. It is not, for me, it's not difficult for an institution like that to do something like this, right? And given your members, etc., your premiums can be very, very low. They can even take on the insurance themselves. They can even self-insure if they wanted to, or they can outsource if they wanted to. It doesn't matter, right? But to me, there are solutions out there. You can do it. You can do it with EPF, right? Yep. For the professional, for people who work in the formal economy. But if you want to hit people in the informal economy, you do it through PNB. Right? So there are solutions out there that can be done, and it's just that I don't know lah. I mean, I don't know. In a way, to who to say this to, right? Because everyone's now focused on the now rather than the future, right? Everyone's focused on like, okay, how do we feed ourselves today?
Yeah.
How do my stall is closed, I need my stall to be open so I can sell my grai and stuff like that. Everyone's focused on today, but I think somewhere someone needs to focus on the tomorrow.
And speaking of the now, I guess I can't not ask you about how COVID's impacted FiLife and how that's spurred digitization, or has it not?
Yeah, so actually it has a neutral impact. So whatever we were doing before COVID, just kind of like, it didn't bring it down, didn't bring it up, right? Two reasons. One, some people say, oh, it should have gone up, right? And not necessarily, because people's disposable income is more towards the now, right? You want to survive now. Yes, you are looking for medical plans, that's for sure, right? But are you looking for life insurance right now? Not right now. Yeah. You're already taking money out of your EPF. You're not thinking about your life yet, right? So that's the kind of push down. The push up is basically that there's new groups of customers that say, you know what, hey, I can't see agents anyway. Let me just explore online and buy some. So net the impact is like neutral. But I'll be very, very frank. Selling life insurance online is not easy, and I know that. I went into this with wide eyes. But there are ways. So we are sort of. But it when things are difficult like this, it inspires the creativity, and I think and the creativity part hasn't kicked in yet, but it will kick in. And it's, I think you're gonna see that from FiLife in terms of how we get around the fact that people really don't think about insurance, life insurance particularly every day.
Yeah. And I guess it's a factor of the complexity of the product itself, right? And it's easy to say, well, just simplify it,
Yeah, I think the insurance company made it more complex than it is because of investment-linked products. Have you seen you and I have seen something called the sales analysis, sales illustration, right? I can't make the numbers add up. I put it on a spreadsheet. I can't make the numbers add up. It's like, but all I know is that basically that fund for you, that account that is left over after all the distribution charges, the ones allocated to you is very little. I mean, it's a minority for the first few years. So that's complex. But actually, other insurance at the end, if you pull it to its basics, it's very simple. You die. Okay, let me be very frank. You die, we pay 1 million to your family, right? And it'll cost you 40 ringgit a month, 100 ringgit a month, 150 ringgit a month, depending on your age. Right? That's it. It's simple. You die, something you can. You can total permanent disability. We pay your family this amount. We pay you this amount. We pay your family this amount. It's a very fundamentally very, very simple proposition. Just people know it because they bought cars, right? They have to get insurance on cars. It's just that now it's on your life. Yeah. Does your family need money? Yes. How much? Figure out how much, and then pay the premium. But the moment we start to say, oh, you know what, hey, but let's do an investment account for you so that you can also, we can take the money from the investment proceeds and dividend, things like that, and put inside your insurance, pay your insurance, then it starts to become a bit complex.
So
And
I guess
complex
the start,
gets people.
yeah. So the start with life insurance, would you go into general as well? Is that in the horizon somewhere?
Not necessarily. I like to focus on I like to focus on things that really have a huge impact on people's personal financial wellness, right? Yeah. So and there's some insurance that cuts across both ways, etc. But to me, I want to do the hard stuff, the really, it's challenging, it's hard, and that's why that's what I'm here for, to try solve the tough stuff. But there's some stuff that way beyond me. I mean, we have I think we have tenang and this and that kind of things. I'm like, it's just barking up the wrong tree. You really need institutional support. You need institutional support. We can do this. I can imagine, right? I mean, right now I think we have a purple casa evidence that's coming through with, or even e-Belia and stuff like that. I can see, I can see e-wallets being fantastic for distribution of some targeted distribution of financial support for people, particularly the one that's disadvantaged. Just the ones that are disadvantaged in society. I can see huge potential in that, but it requires. It's not going to be done by the private sector. Really, it's not, because we don't have the resources, right? What it needs to be done is basically, someone to say, look, someone to capture the imagination and go, yeah, you know what? If we can get everyone to have an e-wallet that we can access, it doesn't matter who. Here are the 5, 6 e-wallets out there, and we can put in targeted. We know from data that they don't have an income, they are informal economy, etc. But now we see this now. Okay, today we're going to have this program. Bam, next day, money transferred into their account, right? Here's $500 per month until whatever, right? You can do that. That's a potential. The distributions one, rather than people queuing up, asking for Brim, Prima, or whatever, Brim, and there's all kinds of this sort of things you can really, really create. And the potential is usually there, but it has to be. You need an architect in the center, thinking about, working with the private sector, thinking out, all right, you know what, you guys are e-wallet guys, I'm the money guy. All right, we can figure this out. But you need an architect.
Well, I guess everybody's got MySejahtera now, right? There could even be a platform for something like
possible.
that.
Yeah.
Hey, okay lah, Malek. It's been over an hour already. Thanks a lot for spending the time.
No worries. Happy to. Sorry, I spoke too much, as always.
Hey, no. It's been interesting. Hopefully, you get to see you when you're back up in KL, and or if you're down in Singapore. See lah when the borders open up.
Hope this thing. Hope
everybody's okay over there. Then I heard that Singapore's starting to going the wrong way.
Yeah, starting. So so I guess my kids are back from school now. Today's their last day at school.
Okay.
They're all back now. So yeah, and everything well with you on your side?
Yeah, pretty good. Obviously the kids in the house, and the stop start. That's the worst thing, right? If they were just consistent about it, then it's fine to plan around.
Yeah.
But the intermittent, that's indecision. That's it's hard to but we are where we are, I guess.
It's gonna be I think our generation will have gone through Malaysian financial crisis.
Yeah.
I think our fathers went through the 1985 crisis. We went through the 1997, and then now COVID lah. I hope. I'm always being positive. There's always a boom after one of these things. Yeah, that's true. And at least there's no war, which is good.
Yeah. Okay, Malek. Hey, selamat hari raya.
Okay, friends. All right. Thanks.
Okay.
Take care.
Sweeties.
Bye.
Bye.